I think I enjoyed the trailer for this movie a bit more than the movie itself. Hello, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I talk about stuff I enjoy like movies and collectibles, so maybe tickle that subscribe button if you like what you hear. And by the way, all of my reviews are half non-spoiler and half spoilers, so you don't have to worry about that until later. Anyways, 3,000 Years of Longing is about a woman played by Tilda Swinton who becomes the newest master to a Djinn, or a genie, played by Idris Elba. In helping our main character, Alethea, decide what 3 wishes she would like to make, the Djinn tells her his life story, including all of the tragedies of his past owners. This is a movie I think is flying under a lot of people's radar. It's not a big blockbuster film, and we're at the very end of summer, so this is usually when people take a break from the movie theater. I watched this film on opening night, and for most of the movie, it was just me and Kim in the theater, until like 4 other people walked in during the film. So let's just jump into the meat and potatoes of the film, the various stories. What's interesting about this genie story is that it adds on to the common wish fulfillment tropes that we expect. Because the Djinn needs to fulfill 3 wishes if he wants his freedom, and he only has to do that a total of 1 time. This inherently means that he failed to grant 3 wishes for all of his past masters. So there's a bit of intrigue and tension with each story because you want to see how it goes wrong. Not only for the human possessing the Djinn, but for the Djinn himself. I would have liked to see them push the envelope a little bit more with the wishes. The trailer really makes the movie seem like it's going to be out there with the magic, but all the wishes in the movie are super tame and interpersonal. Along with that, I would have also liked to see either more stories or extend the duration of the current stories, because the movie has 4 main stories, but in 2 of those stories, nobody's making wishes for the most part. And heck, nobody's even in possession of the Djinn for those 2 stories. On the flip side of this, these stories do have a purpose, as the plot with Alethea is the connecting thread with all of them as she inquires more about the semantics of wishing. Each story is meant to teach a lesson. It's not like VHS where it's just random stories. At least that's how I heard VHS is. I don't watch horror movies, I don't know. But yeah, this film attempts to answer a lot of the what ifs we've always had regarding genie stories. Like, what if I waste my wishes on something stupid? Or what if I never make a wish? Tackling these ideas with a protagonist that literally wants nothing else in life can make the film pretty fun. Outside of the film's story, this film has some great editing. There's a lot of match cuts and J cuts here. One notable match cut features an airplane's landing gear, and then it cuts to 3 luggage wheels rolling on the ground. Oh, and if you don't know what a J cut is, Stranger Things does this a lot. It's where the audio from the next clip will spill into the current clip. You kind of know it when you see it. And I know I say this a lot, but this is a nice looking film. Any shot that takes place outside of Alethea's hotel room has very nice striking colors and lighting. Now everything I've mentioned so far is pretty cool, pretty positive, but just like this movie, this is where it all takes a turn. The 3rd act of this movie goes in such an out of left field direction that really just plummets the entire story. Obviously, I can't get into it now, but a decision is made that goes against the central character's characterization. It's pretty much character assassination. The story could have literally went in any other direction, and I would have been fine with labeling the last act as just weird, but this is like, what? The decision made in the last act of this movie was so strange that I did what no reviewer should probably ever do, and I looked up other people's opinions online. I had to know if I was missing something or if someone could just justify this writing choice to me, but every post I came across expressed equal confusion. I did find a rewrite that I liked, so stick around for spoilers if you want to hear that. And don't worry, I won't keep you waiting too long, because it's time to ask, would I rewatch 3,000 Years of Longing? And the answer is no, I don't think I would. I definitely enjoyed myself during this first viewing of the film, but for me, the direction the 3rd act goes into tosses the last chunk of the movie out the window. So all that's left are the 1st and 2nd acts, and I'm not sure if that's enough for me to justify a rewatch. For a movie that relies almost entirely on stories told throughout the film, you really want a strong payoff at the end. So unless I come across some analysis that justifies the last 30 minutes of the film, I can't really see myself freely rewatching this movie. Now with all that said and done, please exit screen left if you don't want to hear spoilers about this movie. Thank you for stopping by. Okay, so the rewrite. And if you need context, the bizarre decision I was referring to was Alethea's wish to have the Djinn fall in love with her. Her whole character was about being alone and feeling bliss when her husband left her, and I just don't see a very clear character arc to make her revoke that judgment of herself. I guess you could say she was lying all this time, but to pick the Djinn to fall in love with, I just don't really see why. But anyways, this rewrite comes from Squirrel Girl on Reddit. Actually, what it should have done is that she assumes he is in her head until the very end of the movie. She described that as a child, as she fleshed out her friend in words, she felt less connected to him. So when she realizes he's real at the end of the movie, she's no longer in love with him because she only loves stories and myths, not tangible things. Then, as her third wish, she wishes him to leave her. Thus, he is freed as he wanted. But in a twist, the wishes have now cursed him as he has now fallen in love again, but is doomed to be apart from her. This would have tied a lot of narrative threads together much better. IMO. I personally like this as a general idea. Obviously there's some gaps that need filling in, like what would be the first and second wish. You stated that her final wish would be their separation, but there wouldn't be much build up. Like why would the Djinn fall in love with Alethea in this rewrite? But I do agree that an ending along these lines would have sported more narrative cohesion. A major question posed in this movie is what place do myths have in our society? And I think there's some nice poeticism here if Alethea does reject the Djinn in the end, because it provides an answer to that question. Especially when Alethea used to be enamored with this stuff. She literally embodies the change in faith people have in these stories. I think it's a really cool idea to have Alethea be this pillar of realism. It's almost a reversal of the classic fairy tale tragedy. You would go into this genie story expecting Alethea to find misfortune, but it ends up happening to the Djinn instead. Aside from the third act stuff, let me list off some of my other comments regarding this film. Something I really like is that you can only wish for your heart's desire, so no wishing for stupid or meaningless stuff. This also skips over the common idea of the Djinn tricking its master. There are a lot of genie stories where the genie will take wishes literally, like, I wish I was strong, and the genie turns you into a monster because you never specified how strong you wanted to be or something like that. I thought for a good chunk of the movie that the Djinn was tricking Alethea, but this rule plus his demeanor convinced me otherwise. Speaking of the wishes though, the abilities of the Djinn were very inconsistent. He can make you pregnant, but he can't fill your head with knowledge. Like that scientist girl, forgive me, I forget her name, but that scientist girl's first wish was treated so weirdly. She wished for knowledge, and he basically just bought her a ton of books and became her study buddy. Like, what's the point of a wish if you have to do most of the work? Also, on the note of science, it's a cool idea that the movie deals with myths versus science, but the genie's state of being can be described by science. Something else I noticed when thinking about this movie was that every major character is a prisoner of some kind. Alethea imprisons herself in her hotel room, and emotionally, obviously, she just isolates herself from other people. The Djinn is obviously the biggest prisoner in the movie. It was highlighted that the queen in the first story never left to visit her lover, he always visited her. So that implies she is a prisoner of her country. The pregnant girl was a slave, so yeah, imprisonment. And the smart girl in the last story was sold to a merchant, and she later states that the Djinn was imprisoning her. Also, this film is appropriately filled with bottle imagery. The girl in the last story obviously creates numerous bottles to contain knowledge and the Djinn later on, and Alethea uses an inhaler, which maybe sounds like a stretch, but the visual of mist exiting a small canister personally reminds me of a genie in a bottle. This could also represent the Djinn entering her life. And the last thing I want to point out is the color red. I'm wondering what the color red symbolizes. This could take a rewatch, but if you've seen the movie, the color red is absolutely everywhere. The Djinn wears it in most of his stories, Alethea wears it later on, Alethea's basement is illuminated by red light, the Djinn's first prison is sealed by a red string, and Alethea seals her husband's box with a red string. The best thing I can say about 3,000 Years of Longing is that it sparked conversation. There's a good amount of quirks in the film that leave you wondering their purpose, like, why does Alethea take on the mannerisms of the past masters? Why does she see ghostly characters from the stories at the beginning of the film? It's always fun when a film features these little mysteries, whether it has a proper answer to them or not. What matters is if the interpretation is supported by what's there, and if it follows the theme set up by the film. Altogether, it at least gives this movie a bit more value than what I feel it's worth. And there we go, my thoughts on 3,000 Years of Longing. Subscribe to Gaha Brand if you want to see more movie-related content. But until then, I'll see you later.